You know, it's incredible to think that an entire political drama, a whole story about fear and strategy and what's really going on behind someone's eyes, could be hidden inside a single sentence written thousands of years ago. Well, today we're going to do just that. We are going to dissect one verse from the Bhagavad Gita to uncover the complex human psychology that's simmering just beneath the surface.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at what the king actually says. Then, we're going to put ourselves right there on the battlefield to see what he saw. We'll take a look at an action that seems pretty simple, but then we'll peel back the layers to find the fear that's really driving him. And finally, we'll see what this ancient lesson can teach us about leadership even today.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're jumping right into the beginning of the epic Kurukshetra war, with the very first words being spoken on the battlefield.
This right here is verse number 2 from the first chapter. And what's interesting is who's speaking. It's not a god. It's not some great warrior. It's a narrator named Sanjaya. And you can almost think of him as a war correspondent, reporting the events live as they happen.
Now, on the surface, this sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? A king sees the enemy, he goes over to his general, and they're about to have a conversation. You know, pretty standard stuff before a big battle. But the real story, all the human drama, is hiding in the details, the things that a simple translation just can't fully capture.
And you really have to remember this context. Sanjaya has been given this kind of divine sight so he can see the whole battlefield, and he's giving a live, play-by-play account to his own king, Dhritarashtra, who is blind. So every single word he chooses is deliberate, and it's absolutely packed with meaning.
All right, now let's zoom in on the view from the ground, because the narrator's choice of just one single word gives us our first major clue about what's really going on inside this king's head.
And here it is, our first piece of evidence. Sanjaya makes a very specific choice. He doesn't just call him Duryodhana, he calls him Raja Duryodhana, King Duryodhana. Why? Well, he adds that title right at this moment because everything the king stands for, his power, his status, his entire kingdom, is on the line. Sanjaya is basically pointing a giant arrow at the high stakes of this whole situation.
So what does King Duryodhana see? He looks out and sees the enemy army, his cousins, the Pandavas. And they aren't just a disorganized mob. They are arranged in a powerful, expert military formation. This sight right here is the trigger. It's the catalyst for the entire psychological drama that's about to play out.
So this brings us to what Duryodhana does next. And on the surface, it really looks like a noble, respectful gesture. But is it really?
I mean, think about it. You've got a king approaching his guru, his military teacher Dronacharya, just moments before the battle begins. Is he going to get a blessing? Is he showing respect to his elder and his mentor? It sure looks that way.
So let's break down the sequence of events. First, he sees the threat. Then, he physically approaches his commander. And finally, he gets ready to speak, using what are described as very nice words. Every single one of his external actions seems totally logical, totally honorable for a king in his position.
But if we peel back that respectable exterior, the real motivation underneath is something else entirely. It's not reverence. It's raw, political fear.
And this right here just perfectly illustrates the huge gap between what Duryodhana is projecting and what he's actually feeling. On the outside, he's the dutiful king approaching his teacher. But on the inside, he's a panicked politician, and he's about to start maneuvering to try and hold everything together. This is the absolute heart of it. That one single glance at the enemy army, all organized and ready, was enough to completely shatter his confidence. His courage, gone. Inside, he was broken, and literally every single thing he does from this moment on is just an attempt to cover that up.
Which brings us to this key concept, Rajniti. It's a Sanskrit word that basically means politics or diplomacy, and that is exactly what's happening here. This isn't an act of respect. He's not there for a blessing. He's there to do some politicking, to make sure his top general, who, by the way, also taught the enemy, is still loyal to him. It's a calculated move.
So you see, fear is the engine driving this whole interaction. He has to manage his own terror, and the only way he knows how is through politics. He's putting on a performance, acting like a confident leader, all to manipulate his commander, and maybe, just maybe, to convince himself that he's still in control. So, after digging into all that, what's the big lesson here? What can this one single ancient verse really teach us about human nature? Well, for one, it shows us that things are almost never what they seem. An act that looks like respect can actually be a mask for deep-seated fear. A leader's confident speech can just be a tool to hide their own insecurity. And it proves that a text like the Gita isn't just philosophy, it's a profound psychological portrait, where every single word matters.
And that really leaves us with a fascinating question, doesn't it? The next time you see a leader speaking with absolute certainty, it's worth remembering King Duryodhana on that battlefield. And it makes you wonder, what powerful formation did they just see? And what deep-seated fear might be driving the very nice words they choose to speak?